Testimony you're about to give will be the truth.
Yes.
Okay. And we're going to go off the audio, which means it's not going to be broadcast.
Good afternoon, Alyssa.
Hello.
How old are you?
I'm 18.
And are you currently a high school student?
Yes.
What grade are you in?
12th grade.
And do you also have a part-time job in retail or a retail pharmacy?
Yes.
And what city do you live in?
Minneapolis.
Have you lived in Minneapolis your whole life?
Yes.
And in terms of your general neighborhood, do you live relatively close to Cup Foods?
In the area.
So I'm going to ask you some questions about Memorial Day, May 25th of last year, okay?
Okay.
What were you doing that evening?
I was going to the corner store to get an aux cord for my car.
And when you say corner store, what store is that?
Cup Foods.
And you said you were going to get an aux cord. Can you just explain what that is?
Like a cord to play music on the radio.
And you called Cup Foods the corner store. Did you go there often?
Not like a lot, but if I was around, I'd go there for like snacks or something.
So you had been there before?
Yes.
And who were you with that day?
Kaylin?
And who's Kaylin? Is she a friend?
Yeah.
And how did you get to Cup Foods that day?
I drove my grandfather's vehicle.
What kind of car is that?
2003 Buick Century.
And what color is it?
Tan.
And you said you drove, so you were in the driver's seat driving the car that day?
Yes.
And you said Kaylin was with you. Where was she in the car?
The passenger.
So she was in the front passenger seat?
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, Memorial Day of last year, how old were you then?
17.
So you talked about going to get an aux cord at the corner store at Cup Foods, and you were in your grandpa's car. What did you see when you first pulled up in front of Cup Foods?
I had seen that there was some police cars. I was just looking for somewhere to park, so.
So when you said you were looking for somewhere to park, you said you saw a police car. Did you see anything else?
No.
Did you get to park the car after you first pulled up?
Yes.
And where did you park?
A couple of feet in front of the bus stop.
And I'm going to put up Exhibit 1, which has already been admitted. Now, if you look in front of you, you can see a map. Can you sort of circle or point with your finger on that screen in front of you about the area where you parked your car? All right, and you said in front of the bus stop, right next to that little circle you put, is that the bus stop that you're talking about?
Yeah.
So you said you parked your car. What'd you do at that point?
I told my friend to stay in the car because I didn't really know what was going on, and I originally was just still going in to get a charger or an aux cord. So I got out the car and started walking towards the store.
Okay, so what first, you said you didn't really know what was going on. Was there
Yeah.
something that drew your attention somewhere?
Yes, right before I walked in the door, I saw there was 4 police officers and George outside.
And when you say George, who's George?
The black male on the ground.
Did you know who he was at that point in time?
No.
Did you later learn his name?
Yes.
And are you talking about George Floyd?
Yes.
So you saw a black male that you later learned to be Mr. Floyd on the ground and some officers. Did you hear what was going on at that point? So you
I heard there was already a couple bystanders there, and I just heard some people talking to let him up and just to stay calm, talking to George. Yeah.
And did you hear who you're talking about, George, Mr. Floyd? Did you hear Mr. Floyd saying anything?
Yes, I heard him say he couldn't breathe and that his stomach hurt and that he wanted his mom.
Did you have your friend Kaylin's phone with you when you got out of the car?
Yes, I did.
So when you heard all these things going on, what did you decide to do with that phone?
I knew initially that there was something wrong, so I started recording.
So you said you knew something was wrong. What made you think something was wrong?
Well, a lot of people looked in distress on the sidewalk, and George was in distress.
And when you say he was in distress, was it those things you heard him saying that made you think he was in distress?
Yes.
Okay, so was that what prompted you to start to record?
Yes.
And could you see what was going on with Mr. Floyd at that point?
Yes, I could see that he was being held to the ground.
And what did you see with respect to how he was being held to the ground?
I saw that Derek had his knee on his neck and two other officers had his body pinned down.
So when you say Derek, are you referring to Derek Chauvin?
Yes.
So you saw Mr. Chauvin with a knee on Mr. Floyd's neck, is that right?
Yes.
And then you said there were other officers. What were those officers doing that you could see?
They were like holding him down, his lower half of his body.
And in terms of George Floyd's condition, how did he look to you when you saw him?
He looked like he was struggling at first, and he looked distressed, and he looked like he was fighting to breathe.
So when you say struggling and fighting to breathe and in distress, did it look like he was getting into a physical fight with the officers, or did it look like he was struggling in terms of his ability to breathe?
He was struggling with his ability to breathe. He was focused on trying to breathe.
Okay. And how could you tell that from your perspective where you were?
Well, at first he was vocal and he got less vocal, and you could tell he was talking with like smaller and smaller breaths, and he'd spit a little when he'd talk, and he'd try and move his head because he was uncomfortable.
And you said he was getting less and less vocal. Was there, did you become more concerned over time?
Yes.
And why was that you became more concerned or worried?
Because I slowly knew that if he were to be held down much longer, he wouldn't live.
And what made you think that?
Because you could see in his face that he was slowly not being able to breathe. His eyes were rolling back, and at one point he just kind of sat there.
And when you say
laid there.
Sorry, when you say he just kind of sat there or laid there, did you notice a change in his ability to speak or make sounds?
Yes.
And take your time. If you need a tissue, there's some right there. Is this difficult for you to talk about?
Yeah.
Do you need a minute? why is this difficult for you to talk about?
It was difficult because I felt like there wasn't really anything I could do as a bystander. The highest power was there, and I felt like I was feeling it.
I'm sorry, you said you felt like you were feeling it?
Well, like failing to do anything.
You said failing. I hear you now. Why did you feel like you were failing?
Because I was there, and technically I could have did something, but I couldn't really do anything physically what I wanted to do because the highest power was there at the time.
So when you say you couldn't do physically what you wanted to do, can you explain why you felt you couldn't get involved?
There was another police officer kind of like pushing the crowd back, making sure everyone was on the sidewalk and didn't get close.
So did you feel like that officer was stopping you from being able to get closer?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Did you at some point see any of the officers check for a pulse on Mr. Floyd?
I'm not really sure.
Okay. What did you see the other officers do?
Well, they kind of just stood kneeled at the same position, holding him down. No one really moved that much. That was on Floyd.
And did you hear people around you, bystanders, asking about a pulse?
Yes.
And when you heard people ask about a pulse, did anything about what the officers were doing change at that point?
No, no one responded.
Did they move their bodies off Mr. Floyd?
No.
Did they get up at that point?
No.
Did Mr. Chauvin get up at that point?
No.
So was Mr. Chauvin's knee still on top of Mr. Floyd at that point?
Yes, his knee remained on him the entire time till paramedics came.
Okay. And did you get a chance to look at Mr. Chauvin while you were there?
Yes, I did look at him.
And what was he doing? Where was he looking?
Most of the time I saw him staring at George. I didn't really see him take his eyes off of him for the most part.
Did you notice anything about what Mr. Chauvin was doing with his body?
Yes, at one point I saw him put more and more weight onto him.
And how could you tell that?
I saw his back foot or leg lift off the ground and his hands go in his pocket.
So, can you just describe a little more what you saw? You're describing the leg movement and what you're describing as a hand in the pocket. What did you see change about the way Mr. Chauvin's body position was to make you think that?
Could you repeat the question?
Sorry, it was a bad question. How did it change? How did what Mr. Chauvin was doing make it look to you like he was putting more weight on Mr. Floyd?
I kind of saw him move his knee down more.
Okay.
Make little movements.
And when you say you saw Mr. Chauvin's knee move down more, what are you talking about? Down into Mr. Floyd or down somewhere else?
Down into Mr. Floyd's neck.
Okay. And what were you doing while you were watching all of this happen?
I was recording and I was telling him to get off of him, and I was expressing that I was upset.
And what made you upset about this situation?
He wasn't able to breathe, and I felt like they weren't doing what they were supposed to be doing.
Objection. Last part of the answer is stricken.
All right. So at some point, did you see an ambulance arrive?
Yes.
And you said that you had seen Mr. Chauvin on top of Mr. Floyd until the ambulance arrived. What else did you see happen when the ambulance arrived?
I saw that the police officers didn't move, and Chauvin kept his knee on his neck the entire time, even when the paramedic was checking for a pulse.
Did you see paramedics check for a pulse?
Yes.
And what was happening that you saw at that point in time?
They were checking his pulse around his neck.
Okay, so you saw a paramedic touch Mr. Floyd's neck?
Yes.
And was it at that point you said that Mr. Chauvin was still on Mr. Floyd's neck?
Yes.
After that, at some point, did the paramedics move Mr. Floyd's body?
Yes.
And was that the first time that you saw Mr. Chauvin get off Mr. Floyd's neck?
Yes.
At any time before the ambulance came, did you see any officers or Mr. Chauvin attempt to move in any way, move Mr. Floyd or give any medical assistance in any way?
No.
Did you see anybody give him CPR or roll him over or anything like that?
No.
And then you talked about there were other people who were on the curb with you, other bystanders. What were those people doing throughout this process?
They were also expressing how they felt about the situation as well, and I'm not exactly sure, but I'm aware that there was other people recording.
Okay, but were you all on the curb essentially in sort of a group together?
Yes.
And did anybody get in close contact with Mr. Floyd's body? Did anybody get close?
No.
Okay. I'm going to put up Exhibit 184, please. Let me clear that. So, do you see yourself in this picture?
Yes.
Can you circle yourself, please? And what are you doing at this point?
I'm recording.
And is that a phone in your hand?
Yes.
Do you recognize anybody else in this photo?
Yes.
And can you circle who it is you recognize? And who's that by first name?
Kaylin.
And is that the friend Kaylin you were describing?
Yes.
So you had initially testified that you told her to stay in the car, that she stayed in the car. At some point, did she come out and join you?
Yes.
All right. And you, in this picture, did you recognize anybody else in this photo?
Darnella.
And how do you know Darnella?
I used to go to school with her.
Did you have any interaction with her while you were there?
Before we walked up, I said something to her like, "Hi, how are you?" Because I haven't seen her in a while. It was the summer, so.
So you know who she is, but you didn't plan to meet her there or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Did you, while you were recording with Kaylin's phone, were there 3 separate video clips or 3 separate video files that you created on that phone?
Yes.
And before today, did we have a chance to show you those videos?
Yes.
And did those 3 videos fairly and accurately show what you saw and what you recorded on Kaylin's phone?
Yes.
And we've marked those clips as exhibits 26, 27, and 28. I'm going to offer those at this time. And we're not going to publish those, but I'm not going to publish those at this point.
Let me receive them first.
Oh, sorry.
26, 27, and 28 are received.
Thank you, Your Honor. There was also another video that you were shown. Did you have a chance to see a composite video or a side-by-side video of your 3 videos and a street camera all put together, synced up.
Yes.
And does that video that you saw, again, fairly and accurately show those 3 video clips and also show what you were doing and where you were positioned on that day?
Yes.
And we've marked that composite video as Exhibit 246. I would offer that at this time.
Any objection? No objection.
246 is received.
Thank you, Your Honor. So we will publish that, and just before we do, Alyssa, we're going to play that video now, and I may stop it at points just to have you describe what's going on and what you're doing, okay? All right, so if we could publish Exhibit 246, please.
We have a brief sidebar.
Yes.
Just one moment. All right. Sorry about that, Alyssa. So we are going to play Exhibit 246, but before we start it up again, we have sort of the beginning still frame on this video, which is now at 8:19:24. If you could, do you see the car that you were driving where we have the video right now?
Yes.
And can you circle that on the screen, please? And does that show you in the driver's seat?
Yes.
And was that the moment that you arrived on May 25th? Was that this visual, in terms of the positioning of the officers, was that what you could see as you were pulling up?
Yes.
All right. We can continue to play it. And we'll let the clip continue to play, but are you parking it as this is happening?
Yes.
And then when you see yourself come on screen, if you could point out where you are. And before we get to that point, and we can continue to play, did you initially start filming sort of from the side or behind the bus stop?
Yes. I moved closer eventually.
And why was it that you started filming, and we'll pause it right here. Why was it that you started filming sort of at a distance?
I wasn't really sure what was happening at first. I didn't want to get too close.
And why did you not want to get too close at the beginning?
There was just a lot of police officers, and it kind of felt tense.
So we're not going to start it up again just yet, but we're now at 8:20:17, and there's now a side-by-side video. Is that image on that right side of the screen the video that you've taken?
Yes.
And that's one of those clips, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, we'll let that play.
What the fuck?
And what was going on right there as you were filming? Where were you positioned?
I was behind the bus stop, or in front of it, I guess you could say.
Okay. And was that your voice that came on briefly?
Yes.
And when you said what the expletive, what were you responding to?
I could hear George basically crying and begging them to get off of him, that he was in pain, and I knew that he was hurting, so it was upsetting.
And at this point, we still don't see you on screen, is that right?
Yes.
So were you still in the area off screen by the bus stop?
Yes.
Bro, you got him down, man. Let him breathe, at least, man. I can't breathe. I've been trying to help him.
Composite right there. And do you see yourself on screen now?
Yes.
And can you circle where you are? And on the right side of the screen, is that the video that you're taking at that point in time?
Yes.
Okay. We can keep playing.
Where my homie down? I ain't ready back police car.
I'm about to just die in your face.
Relax.
Man, I can't breathe in my face. Just get up. Oh. Oh.
What do you want?
I can't breathe. Please, the knee in my neck. I can't breathe shit.
Bro, get up, get in the car, man.
I will.
Get up, get in the car.
I can't move.
I've been wiping the whole thing, man. Just get up, get in the car.
Mama.
Get up and get in the car right.
I can't.
I gave y'all the opportunity to get in, bro. I told you, you can't win.
My knee.
You can't
My neck.
win, man.
I'm through.
I know you is now, because you didn't listen.
I'm claustrophobic. My stomach hurts. My neck hurts. Everything hurts. There's water or something. Please. Please. I can't breathe, officer.
Bro, that's so.
They will kill me, man.
He isn't handcuffed.
Bro, with your feet on his neck, man, you get off the
His nose
Yeah, that's raw right there with his feet on his neck.
Damn, bro, you just sitting your knee on his neck.
Yeah, I mean, you got your feet right on his
bro.
neck, officer.
He ain't even resisting
You
arrest.
having fun?
I cannot breathe.
You just a grown, you're a tough guy. You're a tough guy, huh?
I love y'all ass
You're a
all
tough guy.
short.
You're not even resisting arrest, bro. Bro, but why you just sitting there? He ain't doing nothing now. Put him in the car.
Kill me.
Yeah. But it ain't about drugs, bro. Y'all understand that, but you don't gotta have his hand in his neck, bro. He is human, bro. But I'm saying you could put him in the car. That's some bum ass shit. That's some bum ass shit, bro. That's some bum ass shit, bro. Y'all know what that is. You don't gotta sit there with your knee on his neck, bro. Bro, he ain't fine, bro. You circle it like in a jiu-jitsu move, bro. You trapping his breathing right there, bro. Like, you don't think that what it is, bro? You don't think nobody understands that shit right there, bro? I trained at the academy, bro. That's some bullshit, bro. Right, that's bullshit, bro. That's bullshit, bro. You fucking stopping his breathing right there, bro.
Okay, he's talking.
He's talking. Bro, but you could get him off the ground. You being a bum right now. You could get him off the ground, bro. You could get him off the ground. You being a bum right now. He enjoying that. He enjoying that shit. He enjoying that shit. He a fucking bum, bro. He enjoying that shit right now, bro. You could have fucking put him in the car by now, bro. He's not resisting arrest or
Is
nothing.
he talking now?
You enjoying it. Look at you. Your body language explains it,
Look
you
at
fucking
him.
bum.
Bro, get the fuck off of him.
What? No, I already know
He's
that, bro. I
looking,
trained
he's
with
about
half of
to
these
knock
bum ass
out.
dudes at
What
the
the fuck
academy,
is
bro.
wrong?
You know.
All right, we can pause it there for a minute. Now, there's a voice saying things like, why are you needing him more? And he's not talking now. Look at him. He's about to knock out. Whose voice was that?
That is mine.
And when you were expressing, why are you kneeing him more? What does that mean? What were you trying to get across?
Well, at that point, I saw him like moving towards him more, putting more pressure.
When you say him moving towards him, can you just was
Derek.
Derek, Mr. Chauvin was moving towards Mr. Floyd more?
Yes, with his knee.
Okay. So when you say kneeing him more, are you meaning pushing on him more with that knee?
Yes.
Okay. And you said, he's not talking now, things like that. Did you notice a change in Mr. Floyd at that point in time?
Yes, he stopped being as vocal, and he was more struggling to breathe.
And when you said he's about to knock out, what does that mean? What were you trying to get across there?
Well, I could see that he was going unconscious, and his eyes were starting to roll to the back of his head, and he had some saliva coming out of his mouth.
Was that the point in time where you became even more concerned?
Yes.
Okay. All right, we'll continue to play. And as this is playing, are you still standing there but not recording during this portion?
Yeah.
And then did you record again afterward?
Yes.
See, that's cool though, bro. You're a bum, bro. You're a bum for that. You're a bum for that, bro. You get mad. You just sitting there stopping his breathing right now.
Look at it! What the fuck?
Right now, bro. Bro.
Get the fuck off of him! What is wrong with y'all? What the fuck? What the fuck?
I'm not scared of you, bro.
You're a fucking pussy. I hope you know you're a pussy on God. I hope your ass rot in hell.
But look, well, you should check on him. He's not
No!
right now.
Back off!
He's not responsive
Get
right
off,
now.
get off the street.
He's not responsive right
Okay,
now.
then you would know.
He's
Get off
not
the street.
responsive right now. He's not responsive right now, bro.
Does he have a pulse?
No, bro, look at him. He's not responsive right now, bro. Bro, are you serious? He's
Go
just
check.
with that on his neck, bro?
pulse.
Is he breathing right now?
handcuffed.
Check his
How long will
pulse.
we have this conversation?
Check his pulse.
Okay.
Check his pulse, Tal. Tal, check his pulse. Tal, check his pulse, bro. Bro, check his pulse, bro. You bogus, bro.
Don't do
you
drugs,
bogus.
guys.
Don't do drugs, bro. What is that? What do you think that is? You call what he doing okay?
Get back
You
on
call
the
what he
street.
doing
That's
okay?
number
You call what you doing? You
7162.
call what he doing okay,
Are you
bro?
really a firefighter?
Yes,
bro,
I am
okay.
from Minneapolis.
Okay,
Bro,
then
you
get on the sidewalk.
you
Show
think
me
that's
his
okay?
pulse.
Check his pulse.
Check it right
Tal,
fucking
check his
now.
pulse.
Get back on the
Check.
sidewalk.
The man ain't moved yet, bro. The man
find
ain't
me on
moved
the
yet,
street.
bro.
Okay.
He's not moving.
Bro, you're a bum, bro. You're a bum, bro. You're
Check his pulse
definitely a
right now.
bum,
Tell me
bro.
what it is. Tell me what his pulse is right now. I
Check
swear to
the
God.
pulse. Bro, he has not moved, not one
In
time.
over a minute.
Stop that. So, is it your voice asking about a badge number and saying he's not moving, things like that?
Yes.
And then someone said he hasn't moved, and then in over a minute, was that your voice too?
Yes.
Why was that important for you? That in terms of saying over a minute, were you worried about the length of time that this was going on?
Yes, because I knew time was running out, or that it had already.
What do you mean by time was running out?
That he was going to die.
You can keep playing. Go ahead.
Okay, that's cool. Go back in the store, bro. Go back in the store, bro. He's
Bro,
not
what the
fucking
fuck?
moving.
I see that.
Bro,
I'm trying to help you out.
Bro, you don't need to help me out, bro. I know your parents. I know everybody that owns the store. You don't need to help me the fuck out, bro. He's not fucking moving right now,
I
bro.
just saw that, man.
Bro, he was just moving when I walked up here.
So y'all are gonna wait for the ambulance?
Have a pulse?
I've been watching it the whole time.
I'm busy trying to deal with you guys right now.
Bro, he doesn't have it, bro.
There's
He's
three of you guys. You guys should be able to fucking multitask. That's your fucking job, right?
Bro, what is you, 1087, bro? You're a bum, bro. Or 987, bro? You're a bum. First thing you want to grab is your mace because you're scared, bro. Scared of fucking minority.
He's still on the ground. He's still on it. 3 minutes. Fuck off him. What are you doing?
3 minutes.
Stop the recording, please. Somebody's saying you're still on him 3 minutes. Whose voice is that?
I believe that was a girl from inside the store.
Okay. Did you hear your voice in that portion in there?
Yes.
And what were you saying?
I don't exactly remember exactly what I said, but I heard my voice.
Were you upset in that moment?
Yes.
And again, was your concern increasing over time?
Yes. At that point, I kind of knew
You kind of knew what?
that he was dead or not breathing.
And what made you think that he was dead or not breathing at that point?
His eyes were closed and he was just laying there, no longer fighting or resisting.
And again, when you were saying fighting and resisting before, what do you mean by that? Were you talking about breathing or are you talking about a fight?
Breathing.
Okay. You can go ahead and play it.
What are you doing? Why are you still on him? Yo, see that he's not. Like, what is wrong with you?
Fucking neck, bro.
Like, for real? You're still on him. For what? Bro, what the fuck is Julia? Like, don't.
I'll beat the fuck out of you.
No, don't. Hey, you don't need to charge. What's wrong? Why y'all still on him? He's not doing nothing to y'all.
Bro, you're a bitch, bro. How you gonna keep going?
All right, we can stop.
You stand behind.
Did you notice anything in particular when the ambulance came about Mr. Floyd, the way he looked to you at that point?
He didn't look alive. I noticed that the paramedics looked at his eyes, checked his pulse, and kind of just proceeded to put him on the gurney. He didn't really say anything.
Had you previously described his body as limp?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you can play those. Thank you.
Partners, right? Those are your partners, right? Like, what? No, that's not, like...
This is what it is, bro. This is what it is. We gotta deal with this show. They're not gonna help us, bro. They're not gonna help us. 987 years
Ain't nobody doing nothing wrong. Bro, what the
You gonna just sit there with your knee
Like,
on?
what the fuck?
You're a real man for that, bro. He ain't handcuffed, bro.
He's not doing nothing to y'all.
I'm a first I train with these dumb ass
The fact that you guys aren't checking his pulse and doing compressions if he needs that, you guys are on another level.
And then you just gonna throw him up there like that, bro.
Yeah.
He's died. He's died.
Hey, bitch.
He's died. That's not very professional.
Bro, look, he's fucking dead, bro. He's fucking dead, bro. Back on the street. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me. Do not
He died already.
He didn't touch you. Hey, Frank, I've been here the whole time. Don't touch you.
What's your badge number, actually?
Back in the street.
Hey,
trying to get run over.
Don't touch me.
Ain't nobody trying to get run over. Back in the street. I've been the whole time. I ain't tell the word how that shit. You're wrong now, bro. You're wrong now, bro. I ain't tell the word the whole time I've been standing there. I even tried to help out, didn't I? Every time I helped a man, didn't I? But you're wrong now. You're coming at people now. You know that.
And at that point, when you stopped recording, did you end up proceeding into the store?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we can stop it there. And was it your voice asking about badge numbers and things like that?
Yes.
And I think you had said that earlier too. Why was that important for you? You know, badge numbers, stuff like that.
At that point, I kind of felt like all I could do was catch what was going on with the camera. And I just wanted to make sure I got everyone there. That's why I was moving around a lot.
And did you feel it was important for you to document what was going on?
Yes.
How did watching all this in the moment feel for you?
It felt really like a lot to take in at first. I almost walked away at first because it was a lot to watch, but I knew that it was wrong and I couldn't just walk away even though I couldn't do anything about it.
And since that time, since you saw this happen last year, what impact has it had on you since then?
Well, it didn't really affect me right away because I kind of just felt emotionally numb about it. I didn't run to the internet or anything. I kind of just kept to myself and tried to go on with my day and remember what I really came there for.
And after the fact, after you had some time to process it, what did you feel?
I felt really like I said, numb to the whole situation. I kind of just pushed it aside because I didn't really know how to feel. It was a lot to take in.
Did you go back to Cup Foods after that?
I still haven't been there to this day.
And why is that?
I don't want to be reminded.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Mr. Nelson.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Hello.
Just a few questions for you. Do you recall being interviewed by Agent Peterson and Ryerson of the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension?
I believe so.
Okay. You remember talking to two police officers about what you observed, what you saw, things of that nature?
Yes.
And if I told you their names were Agents Ryerson and Peterson, would you have any reason to dispute me?
No.
Okay. And they recorded that call, is that correct?
Yes.
And then again, I believe just within the last 2 or 3 days, you met with the prosecution team?
Yes.
And you told them, gave them some more information as well, correct?
Yes.
All right. So, do you recall telling Agent Peterson and Ryerson, as well as the prosecution team, that while you were there, you observed the officers check Mr. Floyd's radial pulse?
I said I believed that they did. The two that were on his body, I thought at one point that I did see someone try. Nothing changed, though. Nothing of their body language or anything changed.
Okay. Do you recall, were you given an opportunity to listen to your previous statement?
No.
Were you ever given a transcript of your previous statement?
No.
Would you disagree with me if I told you you said, I even saw them check his pulse multiple times before the ambulance got there?
I would not agree with that.
You would not agree with that?
Yeah, because I don't remember.
You don't remember that now?
Can you restate it?
Sure. Back when you were interviewed by the police officers in September, you told them that you saw the officers check his pulse multiple times before the ambulance got there.
I do not believe I said multiple times.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Date stamp 36415, page 4 of 8.
I'm going to hand you this through this plexiglass, and there's some, I'm just going to point to the last underline. I'm going to ask you to read that in your mind.
So did you tell Agents Ryerson and Peterson that you saw the officers check their pulse multiple times?
Yes, I did, and then afterwards I told them that it looked like they did not find one.
Okay. Now, you also described to the officers that you were angry.
Yes.
And you would agree to this day that you were angry at what you saw?
Yes,
And would you describe others in the crowd as angry as well?
I would assume so.
I have no further questions.
Any regrets?
Alyssa, you were just asked some questions about a pulse. Did that refresh your recollection about that portion of what you saw?
A little bit. The day those officers came to my house, it was multiple times of being bothered. And it was kind of like they kind of forced the interview onto me, so.
Okay. So thinking about it today, in terms of what you saw that day, just tell the jury what you saw in terms of somebody checking a pulse.
Well, I don't exactly remember standing right there all the way because it's kind of like in and out. But rewatching the video, I remember seeing like someone move their hands towards his wrist, his vitals, behind his back.
And was that person Mr. Chauvin?
No.
So that was someone else?
Yes.
And are you unclear about whether or not that was an actual pulse check because you said they didn't change anything they were doing?
Correct.
Okay. And did you assume that if they hadn't, that if they were concerned, they would have changed what they were doing?
Yes.
Would they have gotten off him? Is that what you expected to happen?
Yes, that is what I would expect they would do.
And you were asked some questions about being angry. Were you upset about what was going on in front of you?
Yes.
Did you attack anybody?
No.
Hit anybody?
No.
Threaten the officers in any way?
No.
So when you say angry, what do you mean?
I was upset because there was nothing that we could do as bystanders except watch them take this man's life in front of our eyes.
And when you say we, were all of you doing what you were doing? Meaning not getting physical and not throwing punches or making threats to the officers?
Correct.
Nothing good.
None of you guys.
No, you're.
All right, thank you. You may step down. And next witness. Members of the jury, why don't we have you go back to the other, long enough for a bathroom break. How's that? Next witness will also be off video. If you could come on up and have a seat. And if you could just turn towards me to start. I'm going to have you raise your right hand so I can swear you in. Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay. We like it probably because it's easier to hear you. If you wouldn't mind taking your mask off,
Yes.
that'd be great. There's also sanitizer and Kleenex there if you need it. We're going to go off audio. Ms. Eldridge.
Good afternoon, Kaylin.
Hello.
How are you feeling today?
A little nervous. A lot of anxiety.
Tell me why you have anxiety today.
Just because of what happened. Just want the truth to come out.
Okay. Deep breaths. We'll take it slow, okay? If you need a break, you just let me know.
Okay.
All right?
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to start with some easy questions, background questions, okay? So why don't you tell the jury how old you are?
I'm 17 years old.
And are you a high school student now?
Yes. I'm a senior.
And are you doing in-person school or online?
Online school.
How's that going?
It's going good.
Almost there for your
Yeah,
senior year?
almost there.
And what city do you live in now?
St. Paul, Minnesota.
Was there a time that you and your family lived in Minneapolis, South Minneapolis?
Yes, when I was younger.
Okay. Do you still have some friends, family friends in that area?
Yes.
And
ask you one favor. Can you just pause a little bit after the question? We have a court order.
Who's taking everything down with a stenographic machine, and it'll make it a little easier for her to take everything down. So don't worry about it. You're doing fine.
And I talk fast. I'll try to slow it down, try to make it easy for everybody. Okay, so you said you still have friends in South Minneapolis.
Yes.
And is one of those friends named Alyssa?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you some questions about, the reason you're here today. So why don't you tell the jury why you're here today?
For George Floyd.
Okay. And when you say for George Floyd, did you see what happened to George Floyd?
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you some questions about that, okay?
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
If you need a tissue, you need a break, you just put up your hand and let me know, okay?
Okay.
But you can grab tissue anytime you need one. So, I'm going to ask you some questions about that day, the day that all this happened. So, first things first, how did you come to be in the area? What were you doing that day?
Me and Alyssa were going to get snacks and an aux cord for the radio.
And where were you headed that day? Where did you want
To
to go?
Cup.
And when you say Cup, is that Cup Foods?
Yes.
All right. So you said you were with Alyssa. And how did you guys get there?
We drove there.
And who drove, you or Alyssa?
Alyssa.
And where were you in the car? Were you in the front passenger seat?
Yes.
Is it just the two of you together?
Yes.
So she was driving, you're in the passenger seat, you're headed to Cup Foods. What's the first thing you notice once you get into the area?
We hear George Floyd's voice yelling out for his mom and saying he can't breathe.
Okay. And did you notice, well, how soon did you notice what was going on? Were you still driving up when you noticed what was going on?
Yes.
And is that what you heard from the car?
Yes.
And what did you see as you were driving up?
We seen 3 officers on top of George Floyd.
And what did you do next? Did Alyssa park the car?
Yes.
And then what happened?
She pulled over and she asked if she should record it, and she didn't have a phone at the time, so she took my phone and recorded it.
And what were you doing when, did she get out of the car first?
Yes, she told me to stay in the car and leave the car on just in case anything happened. We didn't know what was going on.
So did you stay in the car for some period of time?
Yes.
So when you were in the car and Alyssa got out of the car, could you hear what was going on?
Yes, I could kind of hear what was going on.
All right.
I don't specifically remember exactly what was said, but I do remember hearing voices.
So tell the jury just what you remember noticing from where you were in the car. What were you hearing or seeing or observing?
I believe I heard George Floyd yelling still, saying he can't breathe. And then I heard witnesses that were there saying he was unresponsive. And that's when I started hearing voices getting louder, I got out of the car.
Okay. So I'm going to stop you there for just a second. You talked about George Floyd. You said you're here for George Floyd, and you're talking about seeing George Floyd. Did you know who he was at that time?
No.
After the fact, did you learn his name?
Yes.
Okay. So you now know him to be George Floyd.
Yes.
When you heard, you said you heard voices getting louder. What prompted you to get out of the car? What made you think you should get out of the car?
I guess it was kind of just a gut feeling.
When you said you heard voices getting louder, was there something about the tone or what was said that...
It sounded serious.
Okay. And what made you think it was something serious?
Just the way, like, everyone sounded.
Okay. So what did you do?
I got out of the car and I walked up, and that's when I saw George Floyd unconscious and Derek on his neck.
Okay. So I'm going to break that down a little bit. You said you saw George Floyd unconscious. What made you think that George Floyd was unconscious when you saw him?
He wasn't talking anymore, and when we pulled up, he was talking. His eyes were closed. He wasn't moving.
And you said you saw Derek on top of him?
Yes.
And by Derek, do you mean Derek Chauvin?
Yes.
Did you know who that was at the time?
No.
But did you learn his name later?
Yes.
So when you said that you saw Derek or Mr. Chauvin on top of George Floyd, what did you see Mr. Chauvin doing?
I saw him kind of digging his knee into his neck more. Like, he was putting a lot of pressure on his neck that wasn't needed.
And how could you tell, or what made you think from your point of view that Mr. Chauvin was putting more pressure on George Floyd's neck?
You could see it, like his foot movement.
So when you say digging, are you talking about the position of Mr. Chauvin's knee on Mr. Floyd's neck?
Yes.
Okay. So you come out to see Mr. Floyd, who looks unconscious to you. What else do you see and hear going on around you?
The witnesses telling him to check for a pulse.
And what happened at that point? Did you see anybody check for a pulse or do anything at that
No,
point?
not that I saw.
Okay. Did you see Mr. Chauvin or anybody else move or change or get up off Mr. Floyd?
No.
Did you, were you concerned at that point in time?
Yes.
Were you saying anything once you got into that group of people?
Yes, I asked, why are you guys still on top of him? He's not doing anything wrong. He was handcuffed.
And after you said that, was there any response from any of the officers? Did any of them move? Did Mr. Chauvin move?
No.
Did any of them address your concerns?
No. They were really hostile.
And when you say hostile, tell the jury what you mean by that.
Like, the tone in their voice was really, well, the Officer Tao's voice was really angry.
So was Officer Tao interacting with the people on the
Yes.
street at that point? I'm sorry. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay. So you just have to wait until I'm done asking before you answer.
Sorry.
That's okay. I do it too. Okay, so Officer Tao appeared hostile. Can you just describe what he was doing that made you feel that way?
He pushed one of the witnesses there onto the sidewalk.
And did you know that person?
No.
Did you see anybody being any of the, you said witnesses, but any of those bystanders, any of those people on the curb with you, were any of those people being violent or aggressive in any way?
No.
But you saw Mr.
They were just using their voice.
Okay. So you heard people using their voices, but saw Mr. Officer Tao being hostile.
Yes.
What else did you see? Did you see any of the other officers who were there at that when you were on the curb?
Not when I was on the curb.
And what about Mr. Chauvin? Did you see him?
Yes.
And what did you? How would you describe his body movement or body language at that point?
Kind of angry, like.
So I'm going to stop you there. But tell me what he was doing with his body.
He was like digging his knee into George Floyd's neck.
Did you notice anything else about him, Mr. Chauvin, reaching for anything or touching his mace or anything like that?
Yes, he did grab his mace and started shaking it at us.
And how did you feel at that point?
Scared.
And why did you feel scared then?
Because I didn't know what was going to happen.
And were you scared of Mr. Chauvin or scared of Mr. Floyd or something else?
I was scared of Chauvin.
At that point that you saw Mr. Chauvin go for his mace, was there anybody in your group of witnesses or bystanders that were, again, being violent or attacking in any way?
No.
Okay. I'm going to put up Exhibit 184, please. Now you should see that on your screen in front of you. Do you see yourself in this picture?
Yes.
Can you just circle yourself on that screen? It's a touch screen. Use your finger. And do you see anyone else you recognize there?
No, Alyssa.
And you circled Alyssa second. What is Alyssa doing there?
She's recording.
And is that your cell phone she has?
Yes.
And what were you doing at this point?
I was telling Donald Williams, I believe his name is. I was like, because the cop, I think, pushed him. I don't exactly remember, but I told him, like, don't like, because I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't want anybody, like, fighting the cops or anything like that.
Okay.
Because I knew it'd escalate.
Did you know Donald Williams at that time?
No.
Did you learn his name somehow after the fact?
Yes.
Was there anybody fighting with the cops?
No.
Was there any fight that happened with any of those bystanders
No.
with the cops? Were you concerned for everybody's safety?
Yes.
Okay. And at some point, did you see, we can take that down, did you see an ambulance arrive?
Yes.
And what was going on at that point in time?
The ambulance pulled up and Derek was still on his neck. The ambulance people had to signal him to get up.
And you just made a motion with your hands. When you say signal him to get up, did you see a paramedic make a motion to Mr. Chauvin that looked to you like a get up kind of motion?
Yes.
Okay. After the paramedics arrived, was that the first time that you saw Mr. Chauvin get up off Mr. Floyd?
Yes.
And how did Mr. Floyd look to you? What did his condition appear to be to you?
He looked kind of like purple, like he wasn't getting enough circulation.
And was he moving or talking or anything at that point?
He was really limp.
Okay. And I know this is tough to talk about, and I know it's hard, so take your time, but what did you think at that moment?
Well, I didn't know for sure if George Floyd was dead until after the fact, but I had a gut feeling.
So based on what you saw and how his body looked to you when they took him away, did he look dead to you at that point?
Yes.
And did you see anybody until the paramedics arrived, any of the officers attempt to render first aid or CPR or give any medical help before that?
No.
Okay. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Sure.
I have no questions for this witness.
All right, thank you. You may step down. So you can go back there.
Your Honor, I apologize. We will need just a 10-minute break just to reorganize our witnesses here, but we'll need some time to move people around.
Take another break. And then we'll go in after. Thank you.